Hello students, this is the continuation video of chapter number 10, New Empires and Kingdoms. This is the third video. So in this video we are going to talk about how were the kingdoms administered. So the kingdoms which we talked about were the Pallava kingdoms and the kingdom of Pulkeshin, Chalukya kingdom, etc. If we look at the map, yeah, so we can see here this was the place of Pallava kingdom, then Chalukya kingdom, then Satvahana kingdom, etc. As in the case of earlier kings, land revenue or land taxes remained important for these rulers, and the village remained the basic unit of administration. There were some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of people, especially men who were powerful either economically, socially, or because of their political and military strength. So, let us look at what these steps were. Some important administrative posts were now hereditary. Hereditary means passing on from father to son and then to his son. This means that sons succeeded fathers to these posts. For example, the poet Harishena was a Mahadandanayak or a chief judicial officer, just like his father. So these posts were now hereditary. Sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, beside being a Mahardandanayak, Harishena was a Kumar Amatya, meaning important minister, and a Sandhi Vigarika, meaning minister of war and peace. So basically, one person could be, having more than one office. He can be minister of something as well as other thing also. Besides, important men probably had a say in local administration. These included the Nagara Shreshthi or chief banker or merchant of the city, the Sarthavaha or leader of the merchant caravans. So, and the Pratham Pulika or the chief craftsman and the head of Kayas or scribes. So these were some important people, and these, since they were important merchants or craftsmen or bankers, so they had a say. They were given the right to talk about local administration or how the administration should work. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later, some of these powerful men grew strong enough to set up independent kingdoms. So, these powerful men means these ministers whom we are talking about, they somehow became powerful and they started ruling their own independent kingdoms later on. A new kind of army. Just like the earlier rulers, some of these kings maintained well organized. So army was well organized with elephants, chariots, cavalry, and foot soldiers. Besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops. Troops means soldiers whenever he needed them. They were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of them received grants of land. So instead of giving salary to the soldiers, uh, these soldiers received uh, land grants. Now, they collected revenue from the land and used this land to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare. Equipment means weapons. These men were known as Samantas. Samantas are actually powerful people who controlled soldiers or controlled army. Whenever the ruler was weak, Samantas tried to become independent, or Samantas tried to take advantage of the situation and try to rule independently out of king's control. Now, coming to assemblies in the southern kingdoms. The inscriptions of the Pallavas mention a number of local assemblies. These include the Sabha, which was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. Now, Sabha was, please remember, the assembly of Brahmin landowners. This assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after and these subcommittees looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. The Ur was a village assembly found in areas where landowners were not Brahmins. So, Ur was a village where landowners were not Brahmins, and Nagaram was an organization of merchants. It is likely that these assemblies were controlled by rich and powerful landowners and merchants. Many of these local assemblies continue to function for centuries. Assemblies here means these are the groups of people. Now let us talk about the ordinary people in the kingdoms. We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people from plays, stories, and other accounts. Let us look at some of these. Kalidasa is known for his plays depicting life in the king's court. An interesting feature about these plays is that king and the most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit, while women and men other than the king and Brahmins use Prakrit. His most famous play, Abhijanana Shakuntalam, is the story of love between a king named Dushyanta and a young woman named Shakuntala. We find an interesting depiction of the plight of a poor fisherman in this play. So, in this play, tells us about a fisherman. Now, fisherman finds the ring. A fisherman found a precious ring which the king has given to Shakuntala, but which had been accidentally swallowed by the fish. When he went to the palace with it, the gateman accused him of theft. The gateman said, "You are a thief, you have stolen it." And the chief of police was rather rude, and the police arrested the fisherman. However, the king was happy when he saw the ring and sent a reward for the fisherman. Then the police officer and the gateman decided to take a share of the reward and went along with the fisherman to have a drink. So basically, this tells us how common people were exploited by people who were in power, just like police or guards, etc. The Chinese pilgrim Fajian noticed the plight means poor condition of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and mighty. So these untouchables lived in very poor condition. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. Outskirts means outside the city. He writes, If such a man enters a town or marketplace, he strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing the sound know what it means and avoid touching him or brushing against him. Now, Banabhata provides us with a vivid picture of the king's army on the move. Let us look at this. The king traveled with an enormous means very large amount of equipment. Apart from weapons, there were things of daily use such as pots, pans, furniture, golden footstools, food, including animals such as goat, deer, rabbits, vegetables, spices, carried on carts or loaded onto the pack animals such as camels and elephants. This huge army was accompanied by musicians also, beating drums, and others playing horns and trumpets. Villagers had to provide hospitality along the way. Hospitality means uh, give provide facilities to the king whenever he is passing through their village. They came with gifts of curds, gur, and flowers and provided fodder for animals. Fodder means food for animals. They also tried to meet the king and place their complaints and petitions before him. The army left a trail of destruction behind. Elephants often trampled down the huts of villagers, and oxen yoked the caravans of merchants ran away, scared by the tumult. So basically, wherever this army went, you know, there was destruction because of these animals. As Banbhatta says, the whole world was swallowed up in the dust. So these army men, whenever they moved, a lot of dust is created wherever they move. Now, elsewhere, especially in Arabia, it is a desert and it was a hub of communication for centuries. In fact, Arab merchants and sailors played an important role in sea trade between India and Europe. Others who lived in Arabia were the Bedouins. Bedouins were tribal people, pastoral tribes, depending mainly on camels, hardy animals that could survive in the desert. Around 1400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad introduced a new religion, Islam. The followers of Islam are today called Muslims in Arabia. Like Christianity, Islam was a religion that laid stress on equality and unity of all before Allah. So, Islam believed in Allah. And apart from that, uh, Allah was the one supreme God of Muslims or Islam, and the holy or sacred book of Islam was the Quran. Please remember.